Diane Noah, welcome back. If you like this kind of intense, story-driven narration that you can simply listen to from start to finish, subscribe to Diane Noah right now. And when you're done, leave a comment with your opinion, because your feedback helps me choose the next story and the next angle to narrate. Now, step into this scene. It starts in a place that used to feel normal, a Bassage base that was a school until recently. Think about that transformation. A building meant for learning turned into a building meant for control. Classrooms that once held notebooks and exams repurposed into offices for surveillance and intimidation. Corridors that once carried the noise of students now carrying the heavy quiet of men waiting for orders. The same walls, the same doors, the same roofs, only the purpose has been replaced. But in this moment, even that purpose is failing. The script describes the regime's internal enforcers, men who once moved like owners of the streets, now acting like fugitives. It's not bravery that fills the building, it's tension. It's the kind of fear that makes people move faster, speak softer, and look over their shoulders as if the air itself has turned against them. And then a video appears. Not a formal broadcast, not an official statement, just a simple recording that spreads quickly because it feels like a confession. A besieged soldier films himself leaving his post. Behind him, the headquarters is empty. Not quiet, empty. No commanders, no clerks, no lines of men waiting for instructions, no routine, no structure. Just the hollow evidence that everyone who could run has already run, and the soldier speaks words that sound small but carry the weight of something enormous. Everyone has left here and run away. I am also going home. It seems to me that the regime's work is finished and we must surrender. That's not a slogan. That's not ideology. That's the sound of belief collapsing, the sound of a system losing the loyalty of the people who were trained to protect it. And the script pushes the idea further. This isn't a victim speaking from inside the uniform. This is an executioner speaking from inside the uniform, a man who, until yesterday, was beating and suppressing protesters in the streets, a man who enforced fear, a man who served as the physical extension of authority. Now he's pleading for mercy from the people, on camera, and he's still wearing the uniform while he pleads, because he understands something too late. The uniform that once protected him has become a mark. In the old world, it was power. In the new world, it is proof. The script makes it clear that this moment is not rare. It's a symptom of something broader, a collapse of Iran's internal security structure, described here as rapid, visible, and spreading. Bassage units, internal IRGC security forces, the ones portrayed as ruthless executioners who crushed protesters for years and carried out the January 2026 massacres in this storyline, are now discarding their uniforms, filming farewell messages, and fading into the shadows. This isn't ordinary disobedience, it's mutiny, because mutiny is not only men refusing an order. Mutiny is when the mind of the organization breaks, when the fear that once pointed outward suddenly points inward, and everyone begins acting for themselves. And when that happens, the panic doesn't stay at the bottom, it climbs. The script describes the situation for generals and high-ranking bureaucrats as even more dire. The people who live their lives inside secured compounds and underground bunkers begin to realize that the places they trusted are no longer safe. Those bunkers, meters deep, feel like concrete coffins. Because deep protection is only protection if the enemy can't reach you. If precision strikes can find targets beneath the ground, then depth becomes a trap. A bunker becomes a place you can't escape fast enough. A door designed to keep danger out becomes a door that keeps you in. So the story describes headquarters abandoned in panic, armored convoys scattering in disorganized ways, commanders erasing their digital traces, wiping phones, deleting contacts, removing anything that could locate them or connect them to the next target. They are no longer acting like a chain of command. They are acting like a crowd trying to disappear. In this account, this collapse is triggered by a series of US and Israeli operations that reportedly render Iran's command and control mechanisms largely inoperable, around 80%. Across a wide geography stretching from city to city and province to province, the narrative describes command headquarters, missile complexes, and radar systems systematically destroyed, not as a random wave, as a method, as if someone is dismantling the regime's nervous system, cutting the communication lines that allow it to move its limbs. But inside the ranks, the script frames one moment as the sharp turning point, a wave of devastating attacks around late February, accelerating into early March 2026. On March 1st, 2026, the script describes an unprecedented airstrike that wipes the Iranian Armed Forces General Headquarters in Tehran off the map. The supreme leader, named in this storyline as Karmin, and more than 40 commanders are eliminated at the same time. And that first blow is not written as the ending, it's written as the opening scene. The strategy is described as crush the head of the snake. Over the following days, the script describes more commanders eliminated, more leadership nodes removed. It even claims Karmin's sons and entire family are eliminated because the goal isn't just to kill an individual, but to remove the sense of continuity. Authoritarian systems run on the promise of permanence, on the illusion that the same faces will always return, the same offices will always remain, the same threats will always stand behind the same uniforms. But if continuity is broken, fear becomes unstable. And when fear becomes unstable, control becomes unstable. The story says the regime struggles to select a new supreme leader. Eventually, Khamenei's grandson, Mojtaba, assumes leadership, a rushed attempt to seal the wound and pretend the system is still alive. But within 24 hours, the script says Mojtaba becomes a target too, leaving him missing a leg and in a coma. So the regime becomes headless again, a structure without a center. And when there is no center, the people at the edges stop obeying, not because they've found courage, because they've found doubt. And doubt spreads like a disease in organizations built on obedience. Yet the narrative notes one thing remains standing, briefly. The Basij and IRGC internal command tries to regroup, and the script frames the next operation as the move meant to prevent that regrouping, a systematic dismantling centered on Ilam province. Ilam in western Iran along the border with Iraq is described here as strategically located and deeply tied to internal pressure mechanisms, logistics, operations, and the infrastructure used to control the population. The story describes Ilam as a region where Basij militias, intelligence offices, and special forces headquarters are concentrated, a place where the regime's domestic control systems are packed tightly together, like the vital organs of a body, so the strikes land there. The first wave arrives the night of March 5th, with IRGC command centers in Ilam subjected to intense bombardment. Then March 9th arrives with a second wave described as devastating. The narrative claims that Israel Defense Forces confirm that a large part of the main infrastructure of the Basij and internal security forces in Elam is destroyed. A military site in Abdon is struck. The script describes massive fireballs and smoke clouds rising in the mountainous area. An IRGC intelligence building in Darash is destroyed near local government buildings. IRGC bases in the Ivan Garb area are completely destroyed, leaving buildings under rubble and smoke. Then the target list is read like a checklist of the regime's domestic enforcement machine. Internal security headquarters, destroyed. Intelligence Ministry building, destroyed. Revolutionary Guards Command Center, destroyed. Special Forces headquarters, destroyed. Numerous Basij bases, destroyed. And the script emphasizes the meaning. This is not just military targeting, it is the systematic elimination of the internal pressure mechanism used to control the people. Intelligence damaged, internal security damaged, Basij bases removed, special forces disrupted. When the institutions designed to suppress protests are physically shattered, the regime loses more than buildings. It loses the ability to frighten the streets into silence. And the moment the streets sense that, everything changes. The narrative says by March 11th, renewed and more intense strikes crush the regime's last attempts at recovery before they can take root. Even the idea of rebuilding becomes impossible because each attempt is cut down before it stands. Now the collapse turns psychological because explosions break walls, but they also break confidence. And the script describes a deadly psychological epidemic among the guards. It calls it uniform burning syndrome. Until yesterday, these enforcers acted with certainty. They beat women. They beat young people. They arrested opponents. They crushed civil disobedience with bloodshed because they believed the state behind them was permanent. But once they see the state power behind them evaporate, they panic. They remove uniforms. They tear them. They burn them. They destroy ID cards. They erase traces. Because they remember what they did in this story's timeline, especially in January 2026, mass killings, arrests, executions, a level of repression that leaves scars in families and neighborhoods for generations. And now, the script says, the people are in the streets, toppling statues, demolishing government buildings, waving lion and sun flags as symbols of a different national identity, and seeking revenge. This is why one sentence hits so hard in the story. A Basij member says he hopes people won't take revenge on them. That is the executioner admitting he has become prey. In authoritarian systems, the enforcer survives by believing the wall will always stand behind him. That wall is the state, the institutions, the command structure, the prisons, the intelligence networks, the promise that if he hurts others, the system will protect him. But when that wall cracks, the roles begin to reverse, and the reversal spreads quickly. The script describes disintegration beginning among rank and file soldiers, then spreading to lower and mid-level officers. Basij commanders abandon their posts. IRGC intelligence officers go missing. High-ranking generals, many already eliminated, the story claims, try to hide in civilian buildings, attempting to blend into ordinary life, as if ordinary life will forget what they did. But the narrative insists there is no safe haven in a collapsing system, because collapse releases information, it releases grudges, it releases names. And history has seen that pattern before, the script says. Different countries, different eras, same result. When the center breaks, the executioner class discovers what it feels like to be exposed. Now the story turns to the deeper reason Elam matters. To understand why this operation is devastating, the script says you must understand what the Basij is. Not just thugs, a backbone, a distributed network embedded in neighborhoods, universities, and factories. Cells everywhere, designed to activate when protests begin, flooding streets with intimidation. They beat, they arrest, they identify faces, they become the regime's hands when the regime wants to choke a crowd. The story places them in multiple waves of unrest. 2009, 2019, 2022, and the January 2026 massacres in its timeline. So when this structure is targeted in Elam, it isn't just a strike on a province, it is a strike on the regime's ability to control the people. And the script says the attacks were not limited to Elam. Missile complexes destroyed in places like Isfahan and Kermanshah. IRGC facilities destroyed in other locations. Between March 5th and March 11th, it claims the internal security infrastructure in western Iran is systematically wiped out. Then comes the conclusion the story wants you to sit with. The regime no longer has the physical capacity to suppress its own people. Basij bases are gone, command centers are destroyed, intelligence offices are in ruins, and the people who know this best, the enforcers who feel the uniform burning syndrome, are filming farewell videos and fleeing. But the script insists the bigger picture is strategic. It frames the coalition's actions as a geopolitical checkmate that traps the regime inside its own doctrine. For decades, Tehran built deterrence on strategic depth and asymmetric proxy forces. a belief that the center could survive pressure because the branches across the region would still operate. But the script argues that when the central headquarters and intelligence structures are hit with high precision, the doctrine is crippled at its core. Then it outlines two strategic concepts. First, logistical strangulation. Destroy key hubs, sever supply chains, cut the transfer of weapons and ammunition. Leave proxy forces waiting for orders and supplies that can no longer move. Turn off the switch at the center and the branches stop functioning. Second, blinding air defense. Radar networks and communications relays degraded so systematically that even when the capital's central sites are struck, the systems fail to respond. And beyond the technical failures is the emotional one, the insecurity of the elite. If precision can reach deep underground, then bunkers stop being symbols of safety and start being symbols of helplessness. When leadership feels like a visible target beneath an invisible sky, decision-making freezes. The script frames Mojabai's attempt to maintain control as trying to steer a sinking ship, taking the helm after the water is already inside, after the crew is already scattering, after the structure is already breaking apart. Finally, the narrative ties everything back to the collapse of the internal front. Because authoritarian regimes rely on an unwritten contract, you obey. They provide security and stability. But when shelters explode and militias flee, that contract is torn apart. The state apparatus that promised stability becomes a shattered structure that cannot even protect its own security personnel. And the attempt by senior military figures to erase their tracks suggests the regime is gasping for breath not only militarily, but institutionally. The story leaves us with a wounded structure, afraid of its own people on the ground, with a broken chain of command, and with a weakened deterrence posture. It frames this as the end of an era and the birth of a new geopolitical reality. Walls once thought impenetrable collapse, deep bunkers turn into graves, and the ruthless executioners who once terrorized streets hide behind civilian clothes, hoping the day of reckoning won't find them. But the script's final logic is blunt. Escape offers no true safety, because when victims become the force on the street, the illusion of authoritarian power fades into history, and the executioner class becomes prey when the walls it protected crumble. Now I want you to answer two questions in the comments, and I want real answers, not one-word reactions. First, when a regime loses its physical ability to control the streets, what do you believe replaces that control in the first critical days? Second, what breaks an authoritarian system faster in your opinion? External strikes that shatter command, or the internal moment when enforcers stop believing they'll be protected and begin to flee? Leave your answers in the comments. I read them, and the best points shape future narrations on Diane Noah. And if you stayed with me to the end, subscribe to Diane Noah, because this channel is built for long-form narration you can simply listen to. No extra layers needed, just the story, the pressure, and the turning point. Because the most dangerous moment for an oppressive system is not when it looks strong. It's when the people inside it start leaving quietly, when headquarters go empty, when phones go dark, when uniforms burn, and the last person at the post realizes he has been guarding a regime that already ran away.